look, we are back. We are back. We are back. All right, let's look at the comments. Obviously, it's been a few weeks since we've been able to have some stuff, so we got a lot of comments. I'm gonna go through some of them because there is a lot. I don't wanna bog us down too much with it all. But I this is one of my favorite parts of the show because I do absolutely enjoy talking and responding to them. So thank you to everybody who drops a comment and has continued to engage and participate in this consistently, man. I am fully grateful to you. All right, let's go ahead and take a look at what we got. All right, starting off over in the comments, I gotta make this. I gotta big this up. Gotta big this up. Um, First off, okay, let's go. USA Rugby League Union fan, talking about our conversation with Eusebio Ginyezu, who did a phenomenal job in explaining to us about it. Yo, give shout out to my guy Rashad Brown. Yo, man, thank you. Good to see you as well, too, brother. I hope you are doing well. Man is a graphic designer, savant, worked with Jacksonville Jaguar. Man's doing it great. I appreciate him. College life, man. USF. Shout out to but yeah, what Argentina has done in rugby has been phenomenal. I think I agree with it. And I'm so grateful to Eusebio for providing the information along with that. Kind of follow up with that with Ash Mac 234. The rugby world needs South American rugby, which I agree. I think this is one of those things where we have so much to learn, and they are such a powerhouse, and they've been in that kind of middle ground between everybody. So I think they're setting up a great pathway and a blueprint on how to do grassroots rugby in a country that is very large, which is something that is replicable in the U.S. because we have it. Even if our population is much larger, but they're dealing with economic droughts that are much heavier. So we have a lot of commonality that we should set up the blueprint for this. Cameron Pourier 8590 also saying thank you for this, and I appreciate you guys for taking the time to watch it. Marty Heath Dunn 8509 goes, it's all rugby league in Australia, known as the greatest game of all. I love your show, mate. Thank you. Please cover at least 50% rugby league in your show, especially promotion rugby league, not rugby union. Across the USA, rugby union is bringing dying, almost dead in Australia. Very few people follow it. It's gone. The newspapers are full of rugby league. Lucky to find one or half a page of union daily. Rugby league dominates, known by most people as league, not rugby league, but league. It is now and has become the ultimate, toughest, fastest team sport in the world, with ice hockey, NHL running second to league. Great show, but you must cover league, NR Australia, Super League in UK, please. Union is slow, boring, dying. Thanks, mate. Marty from Sydney, Australia. Hey, man, Marty, I appreciate you. Thank you so much. Yeah, I'm going to try and see if I can bring in more rugby league. Like I said, I am in the process of deconstructing the biases that have been placed inside me as a rugby union person about my thoughts and feelings about rugby league. Don't get me wrong, it's going to be a work in progress. It feels almost discriminatory, but it really has been. So I will try and bring in more rugby league and see how I can do better to follow it. Also, and do my part to be able to grow the games on both sides, because clearly I do think that there is a place for both of them. I don't agree so much that union is slow, boring. I do know that it's dying in Australia, and I do know it's very much hurting worldwide, but I don't feel like it is in a position where it's lost. And I think there's a lot of capability. And of course, I'm always going to be biased because it's my first love when it comes to the terminology of rugby. Though, like I said, I see where the interest for league is. And thankfully, based off of shows like the Rugby Odds that I do on Rugby Wrap Up channel with Matt McCarthy and John Bradford Layfield and George Hook, I'm able to now interact with rugby league more and have to pay attention. So I'll try and do better to be able to bring them on and to be able to have those discussions so that we can continue to just balance it out and enjoy it for everybody, man. And now that they're doing stuff within the US, I think they are now particularly that much more interesting to me to do something with it. Malcolm Clayton 6651 talks. He actually was responding to the video that we did several months ago about the Toronto Arrows falling apart. It's a little bit late, but he was like, it just couldn't make a little bit of money. Unfortunately, no, it really couldn't. The Toronto Arrows were just not a viable investment, especially after Bill Webb passed away. His widow and their investment group, they said that it wasn't worth the value, and unfortunately it's not going to come back. We'll see what happens with rugby in Canada, but in terms of right now, in terms of professional rugby with the MLR, it just was not the thing, and it is a big shame because Canada is a rugby arena that has a great youth program, but it is also very much hurting at the elite level, and it needs everything to do to be able to uh, get it back. My guy Joe Ritchie too, responding to our interview that we did with Eddie Evans, who is the owner and founder of Bangkok 10's International Rugby Tournament. We talked about it at the beginning of the episode. Good timing for this. Look forward to catching up with you and meeting Eddie at the 10s. Absolutely did get a chance to meet up with Joe. Love it. Met up with Joe's wife. Great conversations. Great rugby. Man, I'm again, it was an absolute pleasure. I regret nothing. This was an expensive trip, but it was so worth the value, and I'm so happy I did it, and I can't wait to be able to do it again. Rit the Rugger actually continued and actually responded to that same interview. He said, despite being an American, I've known all about the concept of boot money since the late 70s. What I don't understand is if he was playing in New Zealand, who was putting English pounds in his boots? And when it comes to the cup in the US, I'm afraid that they are going to spread it around too much. If your team plays in LA one week, New York the next, Dallas the next, then Seattle, Atlanta, etc., if that happens, tourists will end up bankrupting themselves and spending an entire month traveling. So let's kind of break up two parts. Number one, I think when it comes to the boot money per se, what Eddie was dealing with early in his career, whenever he was 18. And again, New Zealand is, a commonwealth, as a former territory of England. So you're talking about in the late 80s, early 90s, of course they're still going to be using pounds, use the Queen's dollars. Definitely probably was worth more than New Zealand dollars itself. And add to that, probably the people who are funding it had some connection with England at that time because he was working at ports. So if you guys know, like, especially in Asia and Pacific, expats are a dime a dozen. So you're talking about people who are going to be coming in and they're working off of pounds, but they're working in areas that are outside of their region. So it makes sense as to why they would have been using the English pounds. And then in terms of the Rugby World Cup in the US, I think there is a legitimate concern about that, especially because of the size of the country. I think what's going to end up happening is something similar to what you had to do with Japan, though Japan's infrastructure was significantly better for the travel. So when you did the Rugby World Cup in Japan, obviously you had games in literally every region of Japan outside of the island. God, it starts with a K, where the Karate Kid's guy is from, not Kyoto. It's I can't remember the island. If you guys know it in the comments, please let me know. Repeat it, but you did it. You went to Kyoto. You went down. You were in Tokyo. You're going to all these locales. I think the issue is going to be, like, when it comes to the tourists, it's really just going to depend on specific cities. I don't think they're going to hit every single major city. I don't think it's possible to do it. And to the extent that, like you said, I think it's going to be about it'll bankrupt any travelers. I think what will happen is we'll see games in Los Angeles, Chicago, Los Angeles, possibly Chicago, New York, or at least New Jersey, or somewhere around that area. Probably maybe Charlotte, now that USA Rugby's over there, but probably Charlotte area. But I think Philadelphia or New Jersey area. And then maybe Dallas, Austin, or possibly Miami, though I don't know if Miami has that infrastructure yet. But I think you'll see only maybe like 4 or so cities. And then from there, it's going to be the major games. But the centralized one is probably going to be in either LA, or it's going to be on the East Coast in Charlotte or in New Jersey, Philadelphia, and New York area. Like honestly, so I don't think they're going to wear out the tourists when it comes to the games, and they're going to keep the games at least somewhat centralized where the championship game is going to be played. So the most heavy hitting games are going to happen. Probably the least important games will play out in these wider spread cities because there's also money for the teams as well. Like it's a financial burden for the teams as well. So, uh, gonna go skip no issues to Joe. JPJH884 said responded to our talk about Welsh rugby star heading to NFL, and I listed out a bunch of rugby union players who had gone to play in the NFL or attempted to. And he mentioned you leave out the biggest success of the IPP, which is Jordan Mielota, who came from Australian rugby. And I responded to it, and if you're seeing on the YouTube, you'll see it. But I responded to it where I said, the reason why I don't think that Jordan Mielota counted inside my description because he's a rugby league player. He's a league player, and rugby league players, it was just a difference. It's a different element because we've seen them go as well too. But I did mention that I do think that the only players that have done well in terms of the transition from rugby to the NFL have been players that are in the trenches. So offensive linemen, defensive linemen. I don't think that skill players, running backs, wide receivers, which this was in reference to Reese Zammit, they haven't done well in the NFL, and I think it makes sense because it's very nuanced. Not to say that the trenches aren't nuanced, but the trenches linemen are footwork, are footwork or placement, and then it's strength. So you need to be able to make sure you're speedy. You need to make sure you can get into position, but you're not running routes. You're remembering plays, you're remembering positioning, but you're not running routes. You're not trying to outweigh the defense. And some of that is just instinctual that plays in, which is, same thing with rugby. US has its own issues with it, but yeah. So it wasn't forgotten in that factor. Rit the Rugger responded to our interview with Dr. Rosalind Chow. Great interview. Definitely go check it out. He said, I don't know if I missed it, but what happened to the academic sisters? Did they get doctorates, or is Ross the only doctor in the family? Not 100% sure. I don't think I didn't go that far into it, but I would make assessment that they've all done well and done at least some postgraduate work, if I remember correctly. And then he continued on to say, my first time coaching was the Colorado Old Girls, mid late 80s. I was coaching what Rosalind described as modern rugby. I taught the backs to ruck and the forwards to count the bodies in the ruck. Even the penalties play scattered the forwards. I remember early on, we were awarded a penalty and the other team's forwards standing all together looking to match our pack, looking around asking, where's their pack? It was 3 passes, quick ruck, 4 passes, quick ruck, 4 pass, try. I think their pack is still trying to find out where our pack went. You're right. Again, great look. And, the game of rugby continues to expand and develop. And, whenever you have coaches like Billy Nicholas, who was formerly with Lindenwood, and Roz, who's now with Brown Rugby, they're bringing in a game that's quicker, and that's the normality of it. A lot of that old school game that we learn at club, especially early on, is very pack heavy and grounded, which I don't mind because I think the pack is still incredibly important and probably one of the most important places in terms of stabilizing the game. But you want to move the ball out and spread it out wide so you can take advantage of the spacing, and that's the way it goes. At viewer 123, in response to the British and Irish Lions making a super league, they responded, there's no reason why unions in these respective areas can't try to improve the structure of the leagues locally while boosting rugby globally. Personally, I think a stronger league in Europe and South Africa would help to boost the image of rugby globally. I don't think you're wrong in that one either. I think that there is a place that goes with it, but I think, again, it comes back to especially with South Africa and Europe, do you have the population to be able to cover the costs needed to be able to elevate those games and provide a lot more stability to them? And number two, are you able to find somewhere where you can find the financing that can help create a sort of trickle down effect and build out from the grassroots, or really build the grassroots and develop a stronger pillar that can help elevate then the elite games and actually bring more casuals and bring more viewers who would want to be able to watch and understand this. And then I'm gonna go two more and then let this one go. Going out to my guy Joe Ritchie in response to our recent interview with DeMonte Noble. If you guys want to check it out, definitely episode 114. He goes, does Noble see himself more as a 7 specialist despite the MLR work, or did Kutztown and did Kutztown play both 15s and 17s? So I can at least answer for Kutztown. They definitely did play both 15s and 7s, and I know that he definitely has worked on both sides. I don't know if I can speak for Nobles, but I would make the assumption that I think he resonates more on the 7 side than on the 15 side. But I don't think he shies away from the 15s. I think both work because he just likes the game. He likes the ball. And I think currently right now he's obviously in Australia. I think playing 15s, if I remember, 15s or 10s. One of those two. And so I think he's doing well, but I think whatever allows him to have the space to be able to do the job that he wants to be able to do. I think that's wherever he really finds out his strength from there. So, all right, y'all.
I ain't convinced. Black out the tents.